Greetings, you happily miserable accursed. I'm David Herle, and it is a big, big day on the pod. Couldn't be more chuffed about it. It's the return of the wandering Reid, the UK Rambler, the international pub crawler. Scott, how was the trip? What are the boys going to remember?
The boys are going to remember Loch Ness, fulfilling a lifelong ambition of mine ever since Leonard Nimoy unveiled that 1977 episode of In Search Of, where they damn near found Loch Ness. So we like that. They're going to like being dragged around to various pubs and castles by their old man. So yeah, I think they're going to remember. And Sam, my youngest, met Chris Martin. He was in Dublin doing the Coldplay concerts, and Sammy got off the elevator, and there was Chris Martin. Turned out he was standing on the same floor. But
what hotel were you at?
Swore Sam to secrecy. Wasn't allowed to tell anybody or take a selfie. Didn't want people to know where he was.
Where were you staying? Were you at the Marion?
No, I'm still not allowed to say. Coldplay has wrapped me up in an NDA. And,
okay.
It wasn't even that fancy. I don't know. I was surprised. It's just like the Intercon.
Yeah. Listeners, this is not where our travel log ends. Jordan is coming to us all the way from the Yukon today with an excellent Whitehorse internet connection. How are you doing, Jordan? What are you doing out there?
Good. It's really fucking early here, but I'm here.
Yeah.
I was out here for the Banff Forum. So really great event this year, and sticking around for a few extra days. We've got some friends in town. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice. I love that town.
It's awesome. We're having a great time.
It is a fun town. But you probably the Banff Forum probably kind of takes that town over a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a big event for the town for sure.
Yeah.
Herle and I were nearly killed by a wild dog on a dry lake bed in the Yukon, like 25 years ago. Remember that, Dave?
Yeah, I do remember that. We were in the middle of a dried up lake, and all of a sudden we saw a pack of wild dogs chasing toward us from a distance, and they
dogs, or are they wolves?
No, they were dogs. They were like mastiffs, and they were running. At first, they were just
like
dogs.
Hot dogs in your pockets, or what was the situation there?
What do you think I am, Kory?
Yeah.
Hot dog in my pocket.
Well, I would have gotten out of the situation with hot dogs in my pockets. Doling those out as I slowly retreat.
To set the scene, we're in the middle of this dry lake bed, drinking a case of beer on a picnic table that we dragged out there, thinking we're the coolest looking sons of bitches that have ever existed. And then there's these two black dots on the horizon. And then the dots get bigger. And then the dots get bigger. And then the dots have paws. And then the dots become dogs. And then the dogs are barreling toward us. We have nowhere to escape, but we have plenty of time to say goodbye to one another because we figure this is the end of our lives. And then the fucking dogs go ripping past us. Don't even look at us. Like 6 feet past us, just go whoosh, like speeding. And we all just kind of collapse into relief and beer.
Well,
we weren't as chubby back then. We would they would stop now.
I was going to say, you did pretty well. We went for a little walk, and my friends handed me 2 canisters of bear spray, so it could always be worse.
And Kory's made his way back from Paris, where he showed us it is possible to get by on only bread, cheese, and a rented black Ferrari.
All right. It's a life of hardship that I'm enduring and sharing with others. Yeah, lots of fun.
You must be dying for a hot dog. They don't serve that over there.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. I actually found a couple of good spots, and I went to like a very Instagram famous burger joint called Dumbo's. That's like a lot of hype around it. It's like one of the best, if not the best, burger joints in the world. And I went and lined up outside, got a burger. It fucking lives up to it, I'll tell you. It was
Le très chaud chien, Mr. Teneycke. We will have a seat for you in about 90 minutes.
Yes, yeah. Although, for all of the services shitty in France, that's never been my experience. But the trick is when you walk in, say bonjour. It's like, say hi to people. If you don't, you're the rude asshole who doesn't say hi, and then they treat you rude accordingly. But actually be polite on the front end, and it's amazing how nice everyone in France is.
When I went to France years ago, the favorite cuisine that I found there was French fries on a baguette. Now, that is a brilliant fucking idea. I had not thought of that before that, and they do that well.
A jambon bear,
describes my toddler's entire diet right there.
All right, what are we talking about today? Confidence is down to a case-by-case basis. Supply may no longer be supplied. It's the breakup of Trudeau and Singh. Then we'll pull apart Jeremy Broadhurst's resignation last week as national campaign director for the Liberals. Our cursed clipping is from Althea Raj, writing in the Star about Mark Carney arriving in Nanaimo this week to take the Liberal caucus through an economic productivity plan and what is likely to happen at that caucus. And then it's Mr. Pinsent and our Hey Use. So, team, it's great to have you back. All four of us on one thing. Let's get right going to it. So, Jagmeet Singh finally made the big move and walked away from, ripped up the confidence and supply agreement with the Liberals. They're too weak, too corrupt, too in the bag with big business for him to support any longer, except for the next vote that comes along, perhaps. Jordan, you have been calling for this to happen. What do you think?
About time. Yeah, I was happy to see this move. I think it's the right move. They have a lot of push factors here, right? So I think on the policy side, it's pretty clear that the willingness in negotiations was slowing down over the last few months, that in terms of the government's desire to give some concessions, those had started to really trickle out. The binding arbitration decision really, I think, played in a lot more than coverage might suggest. It was a pretty negative moment in that relationship recently. But then, of course, the biggest push factor is Trudeau's terrible numbers. Like it's really been very harmful to Singh's own popularity. They need some time. They have to create some distance from the Liberals. And if we're looking at an election, maybe next spring, maybe next fall, then this is the right moment to give themselves some runway to differentiate. Now, I didn't love the messaging of the announcement. I think it was a little bit muddled. I think that there was actually a little bit...
Why a video, just out of curiosity?
Well, that actually, I liked that because I think that the idea of dropping the video and then not doing your Q&A into the next day, like they're just trying not to step on their own story, right? You get a clean hit out, you let it stand, and then you can do any cleanup that you need to the next day. So as a craft thing, I actually liked that. I think that helps pull it away from temptations to get bogged down in the question and answer, which is of course going to be, what are you going to do on the first confidence vote that comes out? So I thought that was good. But overall, I think this gives them a lot more space to do what they need to do this fall. And I'm not actually that fussed that there wasn't necessarily a specific moment or that this came so closely after Poilievre's call. I don't think any of that matters. I think the important thing is that they did the thing and they're getting the distance. And now they need to really carve out their own path as the alternative to the Liberals for people who are not interested in voting Conservative. And you actually saw him frame that up a little bit in the announcement.
Kory, what do you think of the timing? Is it because of provincial elections that are coming up and the pressure? Is it because of his caucus meeting coming up and he wanted to get that out of the way before that? Or what was about this moment?
I don't know. Absolute inability to rise in the polls, like looking closer and closer to a massive electoral defeat for them, losing, half their seats. I think all of those are good motivations. I just think it's probably too little too late. I think what's killing them is the branding of having propped up the government for its entire existence and being partners in crime, so to speak. Very hard to have a deathbed conversion where you can't answer basic questions that you're being asked by the Vashi Kapelas of the world as to, okay, so what's changed? And the answer is crickets, fucking crickets. There's no good answer. It was a bad interview. It was a fucking terrible interview. But I see Canada Proud and others are making excellent use of it. But
can you stop right now?
Sure.
Can you stop right now? I need to say something to our listeners that I meant to say off the top and forgot. And you just twigged me, Kory. Last week on this show, I suggested that the Algoma Steel worker that had a conversation with the Prime Minister had been a plant by Jeff Ballingall. And that turns out that I was a victim of misinformation, and that is not true. And that person is a legitimate worker at that plant who had a legitimate conversation with the Prime Minister, and I apologize to all involved, especially to my listeners, for having passed off bogus information.
Yeah, and that goes double for me as well, because I was also in on that. So thanks for bringing that up, David, and
Great.
my apologies to you.
I'd like to apologize. I was in Britain. I didn't have an opportunity to add my voice to the misinformation, which I almost certainly would have done, because I had to charge you responsibly into controversial issues.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt, Kory.
No problem. Anyway, I'm still going to buy Jeff a beer, though. I'm just gonna make that clear, because I'm quite fond of him. But look, I with respect to singing the NDP, I just think, if you're going to make that sort of pivot, you make your job much easier if there is something other than naked self-interest to pivot on. Where you can point to an issue where you've had a disagreement, or a test that you've laid out for the government that it's failed to pass. So had they said, look, one of these little side deals wasn't quite up to muster, you didn't cover enough workers with your dental program, or something where there's an issue of substance on which you're pivoting, I think that's a much better way to do it. And I think they should have done it way sooner. What's the great truth with this confidence and supply agreement? I think it's worked better for the Liberals than it has for the NDP since its inception. And the fact that they stuck with it was, I think, doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on some really broken thinking about who gets credit when policies are enacted. And as much as the NDP lives in a fantasy land where they do, and it's part of their mythology, I don't think there's actually a great evidentiary record to demonstrate that that's the case with voters when they do extract concessions from the government. So, I think it's the right decision. I think it could have been executed much better had they done it on a substantive policy, and I think they've done it so late in the process that I think the stench of the government is covering them in such a way that it's going to be very hard to get cleaned up before facing the voters.
I'm 45 years on from high school, Hurly-Burleyites, but it's the week after Labor Day, and I still can't shake the same feeling in the pit of my stomach. Excitement, mixed with a little fear, and confusion about why they call it a duotang. I finally looked it up. Duo is Latin for two. Tang is an Old Norse word for a sharp metal object fastened to a handle. Get it now? Me neither. In case you haven't figured it out already, this week's ad from our presenting sponsor, TELUS, centers on back to school and those essential school supplies. Should a cell phone be considered an essential school supply? I'll leave that one to the legislators. So let's talk about the paper, pencils, rulers, workbooks that maybe you took for granted just a little. The fact is, not all families have the means to provide these things to their kids. TELUS believes every child deserves an equal opportunity to thrive in their school journey, and to start the school year with confidence and the tools they need to succeed, regardless of their financial situation. So almost 20 years ago, they created their Kits for Kids program. It's a brand new backpack filled with the stuff that made for a fresh start to each school year. Pencil case, coloring pencils, HB pencils, pens, erasers, ruler, exercise books, and loose leaf paper. All right, time for a quick arithmetic assignment. Take out your pencils and paper and no cheating. If TELUS has given out 225,000 kits for kids since 2006 and 20,000 this year alone, how many smiling faces has that produced across the country? Let me see. Carry the one. Add to the next column. Geez, never mind. I'm like Jethro Bodine. I'm terrible at math, but it was a trick question anyway. The answer is incalculable. Learn more at TELUS.com, Kits for Kids. Listen, Scott, you're the master craftsman with language. They immediately got into trouble about the disconnect between their rhetoric about the government and how appalling it was, and the fact that they wouldn't guarantee that they were going to defeat the government at the first or any particular opportunity. How might they have finessed that better? Well,
as you say, it was a complete carnival incoherence coming out of Singh. Like, it did not track. So I get that there was a media and a communications wisdom, I think, to the way they rolled it out, like technically. Have the video on the first day, command the media presence, pre-announce you're going to announce something, then drop the video, let that just sit, then the next day address it all. But as you say, they were so extraordinary in their language, so unrooted from the reality of the past 2 years. This government does not deserve another chance. They will always choose the side of corruption and greed. Well, and then the next day, you're going to be asked the question, so what will you do in the next confidence vote? And you'll say, well, I don't know, we'll sort of figure it out. We'll probably cut a deal with them if the price is good enough. And they couldn't square that circle. I guess maybe to try to defend them, I think they decided they didn't care about squaring that circle. I think they probably said, you know what, people are so disinterested and removed from politics that the only people that will track the incoherence are the people who follow this stuff so closely that they're already decided where they're going to vote. And the strategic imperative here is to separate ourselves from this government, because I love their logic there too, right? My God, we can't stand to be dragging around this 21% liberal anchor around our 19% necks a moment longer. We're going to drown, attach these sons of bitches. But in any event, obviously they had to get out of this deal. They had to separate themselves. I think the timing was dictated by the fact that Singh probably spent the summer hearing from his own members and his own activists that they were uncomfortable with this deal and how much regular Canadians were confronting them with it. You're enabling this Trudeau government. Their unpopularity was so pronounced that it was no longer in their interest to be seen to be facilitating it. And I think probably fears that they're going to lose that Winnipeg by-election, which I think is at least as traumatic for them as Toronto St. Paul's has been for the Liberals. How might they have finessed it? I think, I don't really think they would have lost a whit if they had done two things. One, I think specified an issue. Like if there was, as Jordan says, a real discomfort around that labor dispute, come out and say it. Come out and say, you know what, we're not cool with the way this went down, and it's given us cause to really reflect on it. And this deal doesn't make any sense to us anymore. And then the second thing, throttle back on they are the evil empire, because you're going to hug the evil empire. And so I don't believe that the starkness of their message actually gained them anything. I think if they'd soft pedaled the first day, it would have made the second day easier. And I don't think it would have made much difference. But my honest to God belief, I don't know when the right timing would have been, but I think I'm with Kory. I don't think it fucking matters. I think the timing is at least too late. I don't know when the right time was, but I don't feel like there's going to be any chance that it's going to resurrect their fortunes. I don't believe that they're going to be able to get out from behind the sense that they facilitated this government for a long time. I don't think that people take Singh seriously. I don't think Singh's performance during this period gave anybody the inclination to say, let's give this guy a second look. I thought he was awful during those 2 days. Just terrible. He only has one move. That is the programmed set of talking points about the two people I met that really matter to me, and this is who I'm fighting for. It's so trite. It's so contrived. He can't talk like a real person.
He got angry with Vashi. I thought he was sulking through the second half of that interview.
I've seen that happen before.
But it's such an obvious set of questions that came at him. Like if you were to spend five minutes,
he's bad at what he does for
doing media prep, you would have come up with every tough question that she asked him, and his answers were comically bad. Just absolute.
Yeah. I actually think it read to me as a little too much prep, because he missed a shot to just tell a story about what was going on.
Well,
that kind of made
maybe overthought.
Yeah, exactly.
But he also, if you watch him, Jordan, I'll be curious to hear if you agree with this. He always has to drape his responses in interviews with some holier than thou motivation at the outset. Well, for me, it's just about working for Canadians. For me, it's just about creating a crystal palace within which we can all live together.
Don't you tell everybody to start with a value proposition first?
Yeah, I mean, that's just
you know what? I'm off of that.
Right?
I just like that kind of banal horse shit.
I don't know. I think that's pretty standard stock and trade for a lot of those types of things. And I think for him, it reads a little bit more authentically than it would for maybe other politicians. But if you're tired of it, then maybe he's doing it often enough. But look, I think I want to go back to something Kory said, which is around what does this change? Because I actually think that's a really interesting question. And I think it changes more than that comment would have us believe. And I mean, minority government is just an unending resource suck that turns Parliament Hill into a black hole of focus and instability for the governing party. So things actually did change really significantly. Karina Gould now has the worst job in all of Christendom. And you have a government at the moment that they should be turning outwards and figuring out how they're going to refocus their offer to voters, that now has to double down on turning inwards and on machinery of parliament and government. And that is actually, I think that has the potential to be very
committees, right, Jordan? Committees.
Underrated. Big problem.
Right now, the Liberals have been able to, with the support of the NDP, stop the Conservatives from all of the witch hunts they want to go on, all the investigations they want to launch, the witnesses they want to bring, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's all off
now. They've lost control of it. Yeah.
That's right. So I actually think, in terms of a tactical move, whether there's going to be immediately a lift for the NDP in terms of separating, that is harder to say, although I will say their fundraising picked up immediately. I think it is absolutely not accidental that this happened before the by-elections. So they're perceiving that as something that they're going to get some juice from. But this is also just the beginning in terms of sucking the Liberals further into some of the resource things that reinforce some of their worst habits. So I think it gives them some space. And it certainly gives them some space to potentially have some liftoff, which they wouldn't have had if they continued the agreement. So I think it was necessary. On its own, it's not enough. They got to do some other stuff, but it sets the table for a bit of a different period for them.
Okay, well, if they change leader, that might help more, because ultimately that's fundamentally what the issue is here. That dog don't hunt is, I think, the ultimate thing. And
I wish all the parties would change their leader.
Yeah, God, if all you got is a hammer.
David, we had a meeting before you got here. We're changing leaders.
Why would the Conservatives change their leader? Is he too popular for you? Look, I at the end of the day, you're seeing it's not just conservative pundits sitting back like me saying that. It's sitting premiers in the NDP. It's leadership candidates for the NDP. It's like, poor Jagmeet Singh, if he had a birthday party, I'm not sure many people would come. He's just an anchor for everyone in the NDP across the country who's trying to get elected in a serious way. And, I don't think his performance around the ripping up of this agreement did anything but further undermine confidence in his leadership attributes and his ability to communicate his way out of a fucking wet paper bag.
Hey, Jordan, I want to come back to you with one thing. Scott, I just want to come back to Jordan with one thing. So this vote by vote thing is going to be, I can warn you, excruciating. Because I remember watching the Liberals between 2006 and 2008 when they were afraid of an election. Just eat one Harper shit sandwich after another, right? And support the government because they were afraid of an election. It's a soul-sucking experience. So what do the NDP need to see to actually force an election?
Well, I think what the NDP needs to see primarily is their own readiness, right? That's the big deal. So that's seeing upticks in their fundraising, getting their candidates nominated. So, maybe getting through some of this period where we've got those provincial races. Those are going to be prerequisites for them. But look, you can't do this unless you're actually willing to hit the big red button, right? So I think that they're setting up for a period where that is very much possible. And you have to also think that, for the NDP, their ability to go into elections in less than ideal situations is pretty normal, right? They're not going to wait for the perfect scenario. They're going to look at other factors as well, and liberal weakness is an important one. So I'm not actually as tied up in knots about that. I think that, the Bloc has shown that they're more than willing to dance with the Liberals. So there's going to be some opportunities for the NDP to vote against the government, probably fairly early on. And, the Conservatives, frankly, in a minority, there's also the odd occasion where they're going to vote with Liberals too, though they'll never want to talk about it. So I think those matches are going to be more varied than people might think. It's not only going to be the NDP supporting the Liberals to get through maybe the next few months, and the party needs to look to its own readiness.
All right. Scott, do you have something you want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to add two quick things. One is a follow to that. My one piece of advice to the NDP in that circumstance, Jordan, would be speak first, not last. I watched this when we were in when we were in a minority, and then afterwards when we were suffering from in opposition within a minority circumstance. And what often happens is people's cautious political instincts cause them to say, let's wait and see how things unfold, and then we'll sort of pick our spots. But the truth is, you relieve yourself of pressure and place pressure on all the other parties when you jump out first and say, you know what, we're not voting for this. Like, if you think you're inclined to not vote for it, declare it up front, put maximum pressure on the Liberals and the Bloc to avoid the election. When you sit back and wait, then you end up eating shit. And I watched the Liberals do this in 2006, 2008 all the time, and it's a gruesome thing. The other point I want to make, I just want to reiterate, I thought that it was ham-fisted the way that Singh executed the announcement and all that kind of stuff. But the fundamental truth is that everything has changed. And rational thinking suggests that there still won't be an election until maybe next spring now. Like, I think it opens up a different window around the budget. Things could go haywire there. Probably still means that the most likely window is, as we all expected before, the fall of 2025. But everything has fucking changed. Like, people have to remember how banana-rama it gets in a minority parliament. And what people that are listening who haven't lived through it may not experience is that things aren't always rational. Emotion gets involved, personal relationships, people get pissed at one another. It made no sense in 1979 for Fabian Roy to instruct his caucus to abstain from that vote on Joe Clark's government. Right. It meant there was going to be an election, and that meant that Fabian Roy and all of his caucus were going to lose their seats, and they walked into that wood chipper willingly. It's crazy. 2005. Like, remember that crazy motherfucking day when Belinda crosses the floor, Chuck Cadman gets literally off of his deathbed, flies to Ottawa, votes with the Liberal government against his own party. We have a tie vote in the House of Commons. The Speaker has to stand and break the tie. Crazy, irrational, I'm pissed off at that person, they didn't return my call when I expected kind of emotions get unleashed. And so stuff can happen, accidents can happen, people can jump from behind the curtain and surprise you. And boy, Liberal attention to detail and Liberal patience is going to be tried. They are really going to have to. So I just want to make that point, like, because people sort of blow this off and they go, there's still no chance. The NDP and the Bloc don't want an election yet. And that's largely true. But boy, there is a lot of fuckery that can occur.
Well, I'll throw in one other quick comment because I know you probably want to move on, David. Just going back to the comments about committee, I think there is a challenge for the opposition to pick the issues that it goes after really wisely at committees when in that scenario, because it's very easy to get sucked into the foreign interference files and things like that and get off the sort of main script that's driving momentum for the party. I don't think, if there's any examples of message indiscipline that they've come from Poilievre himself, but I think there's always a whole group of people within every caucus that are really passionate about this issue area or that issue area, or they're the shadow critic for this or that, and who are always going to be pressing to do those kinds of maybe important things, maybe substantive things at committees, but things that are off that main script that is really motivating the electorate. And so I think there are a few things to watch on the opposition side too. I also think if you're the Conservatives, I'd be looking to throw confidence motions in front of the government at every possible opportunity. There's only one party in government right now that really wants to see an election. That's the Conservatives.
Liberal MPs are gathering for a national caucus in Nanaimo this week. So we shall persist in reminding them about the contributions our sponsor CN makes to the economy just outside the doors of their retreat. British Columbia has two major seaports, the Port of Vancouver and the Port of Prince Rupert, which is actually the closest naval departure point for Asia on the west coast of North America. Both ports plug into Canada's vast trade arteries and handle billions of dollars of incoming and outgoing cargo a year, much of it moved by CN. CN employs 2,657 railroaders in BC and operates more than 2,800 route miles of track. In the past 10 years, the railway has spent more than $3.3 billion building out and reinforcing its network in the province. Just about the entire output of British Columbia's forestry sector moves by train at some point. Same goes for minerals from BC mines and manufactured products from BC factories. Given the wild terrain in that spectacular province, hauling cargo can sometimes be tricky. CN's tracks hug mountainsides, follow rivers, and disappear into forests. Doing that safely requires training and practice. Earlier this month, as the mayor of Smithers and her councillors watched, CN, along with the RCMP and various first responders, staged a mock derailment and fuel spill on the Bulkley River. That exercise takes place annually around BC. And throughout this hot, dry summer, CN's mighty firefighting trains have deployed to help contain wildfires in the province. I should mention here that CN both supports and relies upon Indigenous communities across BC. No one else possesses their level of expertise in environmental stewardship. Anyway, the fact is, the relationship between the railways and BC goes clear back to the founding of our country. Its importance to Canada's economy is self-evident. All right, let's move on to our, I agree with that, and let's move on to our cursed clipping. We have a clipping today, and it comes from Althea Raj in the Toronto Star, and Althea Raj has been carrying around a baseball bat and just beating the Liberals over the head with it regularly for several weeks now. And here is her story on the upcoming segments of her story on the upcoming caucus meeting. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney is scheduled to attend the Liberal summer caucus meetings in Nanaimo, BC, where, starting Monday, Grit MPs will plot the return of Parliament in the next election. Carney won't be joining the Liberal team as a cabinet minister, despite earlier talks with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Instead, the likely future Liberal leadership candidate has been tapped to advise the party on an economic productivity plan, one that could inspire the Grit's platform or government policy. Carney's presence at Trudeau's side was part of a plan by the Prime Minister's office to make next week's caucus meetings as smooth as can be, a plan that has since been rocked by recent developments. But while some Liberal MPs are nervous after the NDP's sudden move to rip up the Supply and Confidence Agreement, and more are concerned about the party losing its campaign director, Trudeau's chances of sticking around to fight for a fourth mandate got a little rosier amid the chaos. After the Toronto by-election, Trudeau met with regional caucus chairs who were tasked with trying to identify the voices dissenting against his leadership. Then the Prime Minister called a large swath of MPs in an attempt both to calm tensions and gauge their reactions. Recently, he attended regional caucus meetings across the country to hear from MPs directly, without the national media waiting in the hallways. But few MPs were comfortable, they told the Star, about voicing their displeasure with Trudeau's leadership to his face during phone calls or at regional meetings. And the past week events have also changed the calculations for some. It's not only that Broadhurst's departure has given Trudeau an opportunity to bring fresh blood, new ideas, and energy to a tired Liberal campaign team, or that the NDP's decision to rip up the Supply and Confidence Agreement has already boosted the Liberals' fundraising numbers. It's that Singh's announcement has shortened the runway to the next campaign, making it far less likely the Liberals can afford to have a full-blown leadership race that would draw in Carney, former BC Premier Christy Clark, and the half-dozen cabinet ministers who want the job. And that's bound to make Justin Trudeau a little happier. So let's start with her main conclusion. Is it now impossible to replace Trudeau?
No.
Let me lead off. Let me lead off with this. In 1968, Lester Pearson led a minority government and resigned, and the Liberals had a leadership race which Pierre Trudeau won. Okay? I asked Tom Axworthy. Tom Axworthy is Lloyd Axworthy's brother, longtime policy advisor and then principal secretary to Pierre Trudeau. He was around in 68. I asked him, I said, hey, Tom, what were the conditions that allowed the minority Liberals to hold a leadership in 1968? Tom said, they were difficult. Leadership contenders and the MPs supporting them had to follow strict rules from the whip about House attendance, and ministers had to be very careful about introducing bills and calling votes. But despite this, there was a major disaster for the Pearson Liberals when a finance bill was defeated and the government came close to falling. Pearson came back from holiday very angry, and Alan McEachern produced a wizard motion, in essence saying despite defeat over the bill, the House still had confidence in the government, and that narrowly passed. Had Stanfield been more ruthless, there would have been an election with the Liberals in disarray. Likely no Trudeau, Caucus would have chosen a leader, and those with more MPs, Sharp or Hellier, would have had the best chance. Interesting, eh?
Events.
What a better country we would have had. All you charter aficionados wouldn't have been running the table in the courts.
Imagine what all the supporters of Pierre Poilievre would do to the likes of Bob Stanfield these days. You guys would run him into the fucking briar patch.
So, Kory, with that being said, do you think it's impossible to replace Trudeau?
No, not at all. Not at all. Like, in fact, I think it's probably still the best option in front of them. Like, it's the thing that'll prolong the life of the government more than anything else. I still think the most likely time is next summer that he leaves, but it's possible that it could happen sooner. I think what happens in these by-elections is going to be another factor. I think if they actually make it to April and they raise the carbon tax again, that'll be another factor. Can you imagine how fucking popular they're going to be after they raise the carbon tax one more time? Like, I can't even think of how low the numbers could go, but dipping below 20 is possible. Never seen before, but is possible. But yeah, there's time to go. Step down, and it probably pushes them past the fixed election date.
Scott, do you think the opposition parties would actually let that go down? I mean, none of the opposition parties want the Liberals to change their leader. I'm not suggesting they're afraid of a new Liberal leader, but it's a new dynamic that has potential.
It's a complicating factor, but I don't think it's impossible to replace Trudeau. And I think the Liberal Party would be making a mistake if it said, well, we need to discount this option entirely now that we're literally hamstrung and unable to do it. It's just not, you have to manage the House, but it's not practical.
Or your prorogue, which has been done before.
Right. And then you face a confidence vote and you come back. But anyway, I think
after you have a new leader.
Yeah. But I think there's ways to manage it. They're tricky. They're hyper complicated. The risk factor is higher. Likely you need a shorter race that probably benefits incumbents. Probably means that the likely winner is someone that's going to be sitting in cabinet already as compared to an outsider who might need more time to build profile and supporters. But I don't think it's to say, well, you know what? Trudeau now structurally is pleased about this because it means that he's going to be able to survive and he won't. I've always thought that Trudeau was going to leave on his own anyway. I thought he was going to leave on his own, not because of any of this kind of stuff, but because the same competitive impulse that drives him currently to say, I cannot end my career by stepping down in the face of a fight with this guy. That same competitive instinct will ultimately lead him to say, I cannot end my career by losing to this goddamn guy. And I just don't know when his personal calendar will switch on that. I actually think this period is probably pretty consequential. I'd say a couple of other things about this caucus. To me, I thought the idea to bring in Carney, first of all, props to Althea, right? She broke the broader story. She broke the Carney story. She's been really pounding the ball against the wall there.
Maybe there are more leaks than there used to be.
I wonder if that's possible.
Yeah.
The choice to bring Carney to caucus, I think, is shrewd. Just as a matter of tactic, like pure tactics, I think it's shrewd on both the part of the government and on Carney's part, because there's a little bit of kind of ambient risk for both of them. There's risk that Carney looks like he wants to be the leader only if and when it suits his interests. He doesn't really want to be attached to a ship that looks like it might slip beneath the waves. This gives him an opportunity to attach himself to the cause and to the effort, to be there, to fly the banner, and in a weird way to look loyal. Right? Loyal to the Liberal project without committing to being in cabinet or any of the other things. And I think for the Prime Minister and the government, they've suffered from this risk that they appear to be indifferent to Carney, that they didn't want him, that they were snubbing him, or that they only wanted him on their terms. As long as he was willing to come in and be minister responsible for the Postal Service and CRA, then he was welcome. If not, too bad. So I think this is good. And then finally, it's a distraction. It causes people like us to talk about it. It causes the media to talk about it. It chews up one of those miserable motherfucking days, because these days have the potential to be miserable. So I think it's shrewd that way. Final thing I will say is none of this matters. Like they're not going to take a run at him. The caucus is not going to pop up and suddenly say, we want to see him go. We've had enough. The summer's been awful. And he doesn't have any new cards to play. The Carney thing is a shrewd tactic to choose a day up. But the point remains, all right, you spent the summer. We lost Toronto St. Paul's. We're worried that we might lose LaSalle Aymard. And what is the plan? The plan is the same. What is the path to victory that seems plausible? If you're staying, what is that path to victory? And don't whisper to me, listen, you're not seeing it in the public polls, but privately, we see certain demographics starting to move. People like our issues.
The Frank Graves
all this
narrative.
is going to start to move. This whole story is wearing thin with people. So what is the plausible path to victory? They can't answer that question. As long as you can't answer that question, you're not going to get anywhere.
Can we just pause and take a drive-by kick at Frank fucking Graves? Because his hallucination of movement in the polls. Now we've seen some additional polls. Was in fact just maybe one too many drinks, Frank. Maybe it was one too many drinks.
Just wishful thinking. It's just wishful thinking.
But a fucking absurdity. And for all of the editors and producers out there who still place this guy in fucking channels to give commentary should give their head a shake and maybe take a look at some of that, because what a fucking joke.
But boy,
it's not just him. There have been a lot of pollsters who've been desperate to find something moving in the goddamn numbers.
There is
so they look at. I remember Coletto a few months ago said he saw something happening among young people too. Young people are bouncing around in the polls because of bad methodology and because they don't give a shit and all that kind of stuff. That movement is not happening, right?
Because when you average up, 4 people in a certain demographic to be 100, you introduce a lot of potential error to your polling numbers. But anyway, fuck you, Frank Graves. There you go.
All right. Now, Jordan, I want to come back to this caucus meeting.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that they are expecting a third of the caucus to stay away from the meeting.
Oh, wow.
Which is, I have to say, in any caucus meeting I've ever been involved in, that's not a thing, guys. This is a command performance.
Why would you stay away?
Well, I mean, there's of course exceptional personal circumstances where you might be,
for a third
permission, but not
one third of the caucus has a wedding.
Damn, right? So, one can only conclude that it's a version of, if you're not going to say anything nice, don't say anything at all and stay home. So I think what's really, really fascinating to me, and maybe it's to pick up a little bit on what Scott was saying, is the degree to which the internal conversation, the Liberal caucus, seems to have boiled down to 2 options. Change leadership or do absolutely nothing differently than what we're currently doing. And
or put me in the cabinet. This is also a caucus perspective.
Oh, sure,
yeah, of course, always, eventually, 100% of the time.
But there's not. It doesn't seem like that's not a strategic discussion, right? Because those are the decision about Trudeau's leadership, and I'm in agreement with Scott on this, is held in Trudeau's hands, and he'll either make that call personally or he won't. And I don't think it's going to happen this fall. But there are also other options than continuing to double down on what is not working for them right now. But there doesn't seem to be any serious consideration about those options. And that I find really interesting. The idea that members of caucus are not going to want to come to this meeting and say to Trudeau's face that they're unhappy with his leadership is also not remotely surprising. You'll note in that piece, the focus was not on charting what the path to victory under the current strategy would be this summer. The focus was on quelching internal dissent, telling people to basically say it to my face, and then when they don't, taking that as an endorsement for the current strategy. I don't think this is a winning formula for them. Broadhurst's departure does give them an opportunity to refresh that discussion, to show a different theory of the game for the campaign. They didn't seem to control that leak at all. They didn't seem to step into the void of that story to take advantage
Just
of that.
Just let that story pile into them.
Right.
Like
so
a
now
fucking...
it's a weakness story that somehow a week later they're using it to take out the trash on the chiefs of staff, their 5 chiefs of staff departing. This is like very clumsily done. And they haven't used it as an opportunity to tell a story about how they're going to get from point A to point B. which leads me to conclude that they don't have one, which is a really big problem. So I guess I'm just really interested in the poverty of that discussion internally, that strategic discussion, and the fact that they did not seem to be ready with a pivot on that in the wings. The Broadhurst story had been kicking around. It was probable that it was going to come out, and there was nothing ready for that. And that I find is really interesting, and also just telling of where people are at. They want this stuff to go away. They're not thinking about how to use these moments as pivots. I can't imagine that anybody in caucus would find his departure to be a sufficient form of change when absolutely nothing else appears to be on the table for discussion.
I was interested to see Wilkinson's leaving. I think that's a loss, but I don't really know the other chiefs who are leaving. And I'm also really curious. So who's the new campaign director going to be for the Liberals?
So we moved into the Broadhurst. We're done with the caucus meeting. We moved into the Broadhurst conversation.
What else is there to say?
I want to say one more thing. I want to say one more thing about the caucus meeting. Okay, and I said this last week on TV, and I heard some bad feedback from Liberals, but I just want to say it again. A whole summer's gone by. There's been no reaction. There's been no alteration in their public narrative. There's no alteration really fundamentally in their private storyline about this path to victory issue, which I think is so fundamentally imperative. So I don't think there's going to be an insurrection. But, the imperative for change is so pronounced, and they simply are not able to bring themselves to make any of those choices that would represent change. And so they drift through events, and we're going to drift through these by-elections, this caucus this week, these by-elections next week. And, it leads me to conclude, you say, well, they put out the story about 5 chiefs. They didn't put out any story. They haven't done anything. They didn't manage the Broadhurst story. I said this last week. This is no longer a government that's making things happen. This is a government that now has things happen to it. And that's a really dangerous place to be. Like, if nothing else, Kory's right. April 1st is going to come. You're going to have to decide how you manage April 1st. Are you seriously going to let the carbon tax rise again? Like, at that point,
they're advertising now.
Yeah,
about
I was going to say it's all different now. They've got
to Kory's point.
It's even better.
They've got private polling.
Government ads that they've tied their own hands on, so they will put all the money into them, and they'll be completely ineffectual.
They've got private polling that shows that the thing's getting more popular now that they've got the banks labeling it properly and stuff like that.
Slip through the summer, slip through the caucus, slip through the cabinet retreat, slip through the by-elections, and not change anything, not say anything.
So, Scott, why are the caucus so weak? In a much, much less desperate situation for the Liberal Party in the early 2000s, we had to hold caucus members back from standing up and demanding that Chrétien step down. Why are these people so?
There would be flyers.
They've let Wayne Long hang out there for months and months. The poor bugger.
There would be flyers inviting people to a caucus barbecue where Herle's head and Reid's liver would be served as entrees. I don't get it. But look, I think there's something really noteworthy there. You don't detect resistance. You do detect resignation. You get a lot of shoulder shrug. And, Tana McCharles had a story today also in the Star, which I thought was really, important and thoughtful, and made made me sort of go, yeah, that's right. And it was the point about how the Prime Minister's calling caucus members and talking with caucus members, and how he's been doing small scale events across the country this summer and having such a positive reaction in the crowds that he's at. And some caucus members said to her on background, you can't mistake selfies for support. Of course, people still are going to be, by and large, with the exception of the steelworker, polite. Of course, people are going to be excited to see you. Of course, you're a celebrity. Of course, you're the Prime Minister. Of course, people will stand and smile next to you. But that doesn't mean that people are voting for you. And I think caucus know that. They just don't want to say it to its face, and they don't see what's the benefit of saying it to its face.
But my only point on the caucus thing is just to reiterate what you guys said last week, which is I think people are just fading away. They're not fighting; they're just fading away. And
there's no fighting.
And what is the most logical way to interpret a third of people not showing up at caucus? Is they're fading away. And if you're losing the likes of Peter Wilkinson and folks like that. Peter's never going to be somebody who's going to run out in the media and shit talk a government that he's been a part of. Yeah. Too much of a professional to ever do anything like that. But will he quietly go away and find something else to do before the inevitable defeat? Probably for the same reason that everybody else would. Like,
people are focused now on finding their next thing, and that's almost just deadly.
I think that's a fair take, and absent any evidence to the contrary, I think people are loyal enough to Trudeau to not want to be somebody wielding the knife or, publicly out there pushing for him to leave for the most part. But that doesn't mean that they want to join a suicide cult.
Yeah. Right. As a partisan, I'm glad of it too. I know this is a terrible circumstance, but I don't really want to see 30 caucus members rising up and signing a letter and demanding on TV that the prime minister quit and stuff. I don't know.
It's always unpleasant.
You were once pretty excited about that.
I was going to say.
I recall you enjoying that thoroughly.
When we were younger men.
Where you stand depends on where you sit.
All right, you guys have been wanting to talk about Broadhurst all show. Let's talk about Broadhurst. As was referenced in Althea's column, the Liberal National Campaign Director, Jeremy Broadhurst, stepped down last week. He's been serving Liberal leaders since Dion and has been Katie Telford's designated hitter for Trudeau's entire time as leader. Different spins emerged about the reasons why he left. I'll eat a Rough Riders jersey if he told Trudeau that Trudeau can't win. But he probably thinks that. Scott, the timing is odd, that's for sure. Even more interesting is how big a story this became, given that nobody off of Parliament Hill knows who Jeremy Broadhurst is. How did this become like a national news story?
Well, part of the answer is I actually am still surprised by it. Like, even in this current context, I'm still surprised at the fact, like, last week I woke up one day and I still get newspapers to my house. I know, pretty cool, right? Like, I'm Aristotle. That's how
you're weird.
So, and the headline of two national newspapers was
Stone tablets are not available.
Exactly.
Are they delivered? Are they delivered by
the pulp and paper industry, Scott?
I think it's a symptom of there's this narrative that there is zero change and there's zero alteration and adjustment on the part of the Liberals, and so this takes on a much bigger significance. And the National Gallery have nothing else. You got to feed the change beast, and it's not being fed, and so it will just consume this as a bigger piece of change than maybe it necessarily merits. Like, I don't want to speculate on what Broadhurst is no longer there. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't know. I don't know, and I don't want to. Those things are personal, and I just don't. I don't know. But what I will say, from a guy who was a comms director to a prime minister, I was irate, literally on a professional basis. I was irate at the way that the story was managed. The fact that they would know on the day that the NDP deal is being abandoned, that they would know that the story is bubbling around Ottawa. I fucking heard it. I think we were all talking about it on our WhatsApp chain. So that's the day prior to it breaking. And obviously, Althea was calling into the prime minister's office.
Your sources are bad.
Yeah, your sources are bad. Like, so one of the ways it could have been less substantial a story would have been to have the reaction that they eventually generated, which was to have Jeremy issue a statement that says, yada, yada, takes a lot of energy, been doing it a long time, going to move on, family, blah, blah, cha. Why couldn't you have done that a day earlier? Why let that story brew when you knew it was all over the place? You knew it was going to be written, and instead take it as badly as you did. So it's just, to me, that was malpractice. I don't understand it. I'll never be able to understand it. And so there you go. What's the answer to the question? The answer is, well, at least if you leave it untended, the weed grows.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting just to comment on that. The timing did matter, right? Because it came so quickly on the heels of the confidence and supply agreement ending. It really reinforced a point of weakness. And so for it to come out uncontrolled like that, I think probably made it a lot more damaging than it might have been in a different context.
And to your point, Jordan, the X factor.
Especially with the initial
the X factor
spin.
being that he had told the prime minister he couldn't win.
That I actually, right. I would maybe say, I disagree a little bit on why it was so interesting. I think it was so interesting because there was this notion that perhaps Broadhurst had said what nobody else apparently has the chutzpah to say to Trudeau's face, right? And so that's an element of, I think, why there was so much interest in this story, the way it came out, was that idea that somebody actually said to Trudeau that this is game over for you. Now, whether he did or he didn't, I think on a professional level would find it pretty difficult to imagine that was the conversation for a variety of reasons, but that, I think, gave the story also a lot more punch in terms of the damage. And then, yeah, to let it hang out there at that moment, that timing, it really, it made it seem even weaker.
It is inconceivable that there were not people around the prime minister in that operation who didn't say, guys, we got to manage the story. We need to issue a statement. We cannot have a story that headlines the fact that he's leaving because he told the prime minister he couldn't win, and allow that to persist out there. And that rumor was going around the day before. We heard it before it hit print. So somebody, in my view, overruled that decision and said, no, let's just let this thing germinate wherever it wants to go. Terrible.
But there's also, I mean, I don't know how important it is, to be honest. I mean, I don't mean to slag Jeremy, but there's campaign directors and then there's campaign directors. Kory is campaign director for Ford, and Kory is the guiding mind of the Ford election campaign. Jeremy is not the guiding mind of the Trudeau election campaign. Katie Telford is the guiding mind of the Trudeau re-election campaign. His job was more administrative. I'm not sure that can't be replaced fairly easily.
But then that also goes to the question of how important is this, right? So I don't also want to enter into the did he jump or was he pushed? I don't think that's really significant. But if you were trying to control the message and trying to get something positive out of it, then there is a story that you could tell there, and that's one that they utterly opted not to tell. And so that in itself, I think, is really telling.
Kory, what do you think the significance of this is, if any?
Well, I guess it kind of depends on what the reasons are. You know, there are competing narratives out there, and I have no fucking clue which one's true. But you know, like, he's clearly somebody who's been central to the political machine of this government over a long time, and so you know, I've met him a few times. Like, we're not, you know, friends as you and I are or anything. Like, I don't have any particular insight into the situation. I will take my hat off and try to say something nice about the guy, because, like, you know, he has been a part of some pretty successful campaigns, and has been a worthy adversary for a lot of conservatives campaigning against him. So, you know, credit to him. I'm sure that's a loss to their organization to some level. It's an opportunity for renewal as well. In terms of, you know, media stories talking about what private advice, you know, you've given to the leader you're working for, I think we've all been victim of stories in the media purporting that we have advised one thing or another where it's, you know, absolute fucking bullshit. So that happens a lot of the time too. So, you know, it's really hard to know, but yeah, I think probably what's the you know, the truest thing at the end of the day is what we talked about around the caucus meeting. You know, when you hit a certain level in the polls, all news starts becoming bad news or gets spun as bad news. And instead of this being a story of, you know, leadership renewal and all of that, it's spun as, you know, rats leaving the ship sort of narrative, which is, you know, which I think is probably unfair to Jeremy, and it's probably unfair to the government, and you know, but it you know, fair and true sort of gets lost in the wash when you're at this point in the polls. And I think we're just going to continue to see more and more of this. Like, it's not Pablo leaving to pursue an opportunity in the Quebec Liberal Party. It's Pablo leaving the party because he thinks it's going to lose. It's not, you know, like, all of these things just get spun in the worst possible way. And so I don't know what the truth is, but you know, I know what the reality in terms of media coverage is. It's shit. And you know, I feel some level of sympathy for those involved, because you know, no matter what you decide, it's the wrong decision at a certain point.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd say about Broadhurst is that it goes right to election preparedness, which is something that's also a problem for the government. So you have an election timeline potentially being sped up with the confidence supply agreement ending. So a lot of pressure immediately going up on election preparedness. And then the very next day, this story breaking with no narrative about what the replacement is or about what the potential path would be. And that, I think, is really tough. That's a very, very negative story to have hanging out there.
So who's going to be the replacement? Who's going to be your buddy Bevins? Who do you think's going in there?
I've heard that rumor, and that's plausible because he knows Katie very well, and Andrew's campaign has a lot of campaign experience. Hasn't been at that place in the org chart, but he's been as high as that place in the org chart, just different. So that's a potential choice. I'll tell you what. The only name that I know of that would really inspire confidence in the caucus and Liberals across the country is Don Guy. That is the name that if they brought him in, people would say, okay, now this is serious. Trudeau probably is serious. Trudeau probably has a plan. I think Guy is the most successful Liberal campaign manager of his generation. And I think that it would take something like that to really give people confidence as a replacement.
Interesting.
Scott?
I agree with that. I agree with that. And I have nothing to add to that.
Nothing to add to that. Okay, well then let's go to our Hey Yous. It's that time of day. Mr. Pinson, bring us home.
Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. The Hey Yous are about to begin.
Is that a Pierre Poilievreism? Did I just use a Pierre Poilievreism?
You definitely did.
Are you going to bring it home?
Holy fuck! It is infiltrating my brain. I'm going to fucking be talking about fixing the budget soon. Anyway,
every time you use it, you got to set aside $20 to give to Jenny.
Fuck! I owe her so much money. I owe her so much money already.
Got the 12 steps on your bedside table there, Dave?
All right, who's going to start with a Hey You?
I got a short one today.
Yeah.
There's some nice news to see last week. A Hey You going out to Shannon Phillips, who appears to have landed on her feet with Meredith Bosencool. So congrats to her. I think that's great. And now a lot more people are going to be able to benefit from her smarts. So I was really happy to see that. Glad she's staying in public policy spaces, in some way.
Kory?
Well, I was going to toss mine to Blanchette and the BQ. It's going to be a very interesting time to see what they try to extract from the government in order to keep it afloat. Certainly lived through the period of time where that was relevant for the Harper Conservatives. They were able to keep a majority or a minority government going through 2 terms of office without having any confidence in supply agreement, and the Bloc was certainly part of what allowed that to happen. So, I'm hey you Blanchette, I'm going to be very interested to see what cards you play.
Scott.
I have a strange Hey You. I have a strange Hey You that's drawn from my trip to the United Kingdom. Went to England and Scotland and Ireland. And at every leg of the journey, I heard from people when they discovered I was Canadian, strong views about Justin Trudeau. And it had the effect, Liberals listening who are always giving me the gears about I'm not defending the Prime Minister and I'm not a loyal Liberal and how dare I be so critical. It had the peculiar effect of turning me into a rabid defender of the Prime Ministers. And the first and most pronounced event like this, and I'm going to give a trigger warning. There's a little see you next Tuesday coming because I was in the United Kingdom and that's the way they talk over there. I'm sitting in this bar, this pub, next to my hotel. On the second day, I was there. And this pub is almost abandoned. There's hardly anyone in it. And I've got a little book that I'm keeping where I'm just writing down the day's activities, like a little journal. Again, please don't make fun of me. I grab newspapers.
Beer,
I journalize.
more beer. Add another beer.
Loser. That's pretty much it. So I'm right there. And this guy is at the other end of the bar. Burly looking guy. Looks like a rugby player. Hard looking guy. Both 30. Hey, what are you doing there, man? What are you writing? We're curious. What are you writing in there? I was like, I explained, I'm just on a trip with my family. Oh, yeah. He comes over. Canadian, eh? Yeah. At Trudeau. He's a bad cunt, eh? And I was like, whoa. You're reminded, eh? Like that word has a different carriage over there. And I'm like, and in my mind, I think to myself, well, how am I going to react to this? And, half the time you kind of like shrug your shoulders and try to just get past it. And this guy's like half drunk and whatever. And I was just like, fuck it. So I'm like, no, he's a good cunt. I know him a little bit, worked in politics. And I'm going to tell you right now, like he might be unpopular. He may be likely to lose the next election, but he sure as shit beats the alternative. And he's a good guy, as well intended. Guy looks at me. Nah, No, fuck off. And he's going on and he's all over me and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, after a second, he lays off. He goes down the other end of the bar. And you can see the bartender's looking, going, what the Christ is going to happen here? I go back to my little diary right now, which I think this guy thinks is not the most masculine expression of conduct. And then after a second, he says, Scott, let me ask you this. Are we free? I'm like, what? Are we free? I'm like, well, we're pretty fucking free, aren't we? Like, I brought my kids across the Atlantic Ocean. We're sitting at a bar having a beer. You're getting half drunk. I mean, I don't know. Free compared to whom? I feel pretty fucking free. You're not free. What about the World Economic Forum? I'm like, well, I've been there too. I was there multiple times over the years. No, you're part of it. Anyway, that's what happened. Twice more. Interestingly, both other times by Americans. Actually, no, and I guess one other Scottish bartender. I was confronted about Trudeau, people slagging Trudeau, and it rallied something patriotic in me where I felt the need to get in their grill and say, no, back off, he's ours, knock it off. So to all the liberals who are always mad at me, just know that at least when I'm in another country, I stand up and I put on the JT sweater.
Well, there you go.
Another way of reading that story, is that everywhere you went, in every country, in every language, people hated Trudeau.
It's, yes.
And also felt obligated to fight.
I have to say, nobody said to me, you know what? I really admire that guy. It was always men, and it was always negative.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up. All right, go ahead, Kory.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, but I'm not sure you should read that as that's made you become a better liberal. Like, I always find the impulse when people impugn the motives of people in elective office in that way, feel the desire to defend them because, it's very rare. It's very, very fucking rare to find somebody who's run for office and served in that office in particular, who is not actually well-intentioned. And look, I will say the same for Trudeau. Like, obviously, I do not support the Liberal Party politically. Newsflash for everyone listening. But he is not, he's not a see you next Tuesday who hates the country any more than Pierre Poilievre is, any more than Stephen Harper was when people were running around saying fuck Harper everywhere we went. Like, it's just not true. And I don't know. I don't think it makes you a good liberal if that makes you feel any better. I just think it makes you somebody who's worked around politics at a senior level and knows that that's utter bullshit.
Yeah, you're probably right about the motivation and what unlocked it in me. But I literally thought I might end up in a fight with this guy, and I thought, fuck it, like I'm just not taking this shit.
Yeah. All right, I got a quick hey you. It goes out to Carla Beck in the Saskatchewan NDP. You've got an ad on the air. I find that encouraging. It's got a nice little conceit to it that plays into your history as part of the fabric of Saskatchewan. I like that. It's not hard enough. It's not hard enough. You got to make a case for change in the province. You got to fucking take that baseball bat and fucking hit them. Hit them with it. And I say healthcare. Healthcare is what I would hit them with. But in any event, that ad was a nice start, but it isn't good enough. Come back with another one. All right. That's my hey you. That's our show for this week. Thank the three of you very much. Thank you for being here. Finally returning to the country and all assembling. I want to thank our presenting sponsor, TELUS, and our sponsor, CN, and all of you accursed out there who watched or listened today. And Jeremy Broadhurst, you're a good fellow. Anyway, take care of yourselves. We'll see you next week.